Hi everyone, I'm Ayuj and this is Social Soda. And today I'm going to be talking about some tips to help you get into a top university in the UK. Applying to university can be a very daunting task because it's this big unknown. So I thought that giving you a few tips from my perspective would help you. The number one thing I would say as a general philosophy for getting into university is to break it down into simpler tasks. And this remains fairly simple, to be honest, for most university subjects, besides these specialist ones, such as law and medicine, which require very specialist routes. I think there's plenty of career routes that you can go down without going to university. But if you don't feel ready yet, then don't hesitate to take a year off and work or try and figure out what you're passionate about. I think this can be really beneficial, and you have plenty of people at university who start out with having taken a year off and worked for a little bit. Have a think about which subject area you're passionate about. Research what universities are most renowned for that subject. I would say that studying that subject should probably be your main criteria when deciding what university you'd like to go to. But at the same time, come up with a list of universities that meet your price preferences, geography preferences, and also your social life preferences. Now, moving on to study tips. I'm not going to patronize you and give you a breakdown of how you can study. But I truly believe that anyone can be a good student. It's just that some people have better circumstances in terms of better teachers and better resources that help them learn how to study better. So I'll just give you a couple of tips on how I personally approach studying at school. I think the one of the things that mainly helped me was that I tried not to build up an exam or a test as some sort of unsurmountable obstacle. What I did was I generally approached it as a fairly simple problem that I could develop a solution for. And the way I did this was whenever I was studying for an exam in my IB, I initially looked at the marking criteria of how this would be assessed in my final grade. And consequently, when I looked at my marking criteria, I was able to figure out what exactly the examiners wanted and how I could approach a problem. This was something I learned during GCSEs, and it ended up really helping me because I think this helps facilitate developing an understanding of the actual issue itself. What you want to do when you're being taught a subject as well is at least try to properly understand it. I think that it's not necessary to start revising months and months in advance of an exam. But what you do want to do is make sure that you understand and have a solid grasp of key concepts being taught to you. You can use resources such as BBC Bitesize, or obviously there's hundreds of online resources for examining boards like the A levels and the International Baccalaureate. But once you develop a keen understanding of this information, then when you begin revising for your exams, you are actually recalling concepts that you've already learned, as opposed to learning brand new concepts, having to balance that with hundreds of other tasks at the same time. It's really time management. Finally, personal statement. Now, this is probably the most dreaded part for most people looking to apply to university. I do think that the personal statement is actually a reasonably easy process once you understand what it truly is. I found it a bit easier because I was applying to US universities at the same time. And because of that, I had so much experience with this form of essay writing because these US universities require tons of essays. However, what the personal statement requires is that it has to be fairly simple, over 4,000 characters, and has to explain your intention for joining this particular subject area and why your background and your achievements have led you up to this point. If you don't have experience in this area, that's fine. But what you do want to do is at least read a few books related to the subject area, or have one or two activities related to the subject area. Really simple one could be a blog. I wrote a blog during my year 12 and year 13. I cited that as evidence for my personal statement. Additionally, obviously use resources like YouTube. You can find hundreds of examples of great personal statements that help people land into top universities. And make sure you don't overcomplicate it, because overcomplicating is the biggest issue that most people run into with their writing. You want to keep things as simple as possible, but as direct as possible to answer the purpose. That's it for my tips on getting into a top university. I understand that some of these might be fairly generic, but it is necessary to emphasize these points, because a lot of people think that getting into university is a lot more complicated than it actually is. Just try to break it down as a problem into simpler steps, and I think that almost anyone can succeed in this.